The rain came down in sheets, turning the streets of downtown Chicago into a slick, shimmering maze of neon reflections. Detective Mark Holloway sat in his unmarked cruiser, fingers drumming against the steering wheel, his sharp blue eyes scanning the sidewalk. He was a man who prided himself on his instincts that had earned him a reputation as one of the toughest cops in the precinct. Tonight, those instincts were buzzing. A black luxury sedan, a Maybach with tinted windows, rolled smoothly through the intersection, ignoring the red light. Holloway's lips curled into a smirk. Typical, he thought. Rich folks always thought the rules didn't apply to them. He flicked on his lights and siren, pulling the cruiser in a sharp U-turn. The Maybach didn't stop. Holloway's smirk faded. He hit the gas, closing the distance. Dispatch. This is Holloway. In pursuit of a black Maybach. Plates unknown. Heading west on Adams. Suspect failed to yield. The sedan finally pulled over near an upscale high-rise, its engine purring to a stop. Holloway stepped out, hand resting on his holstered Glock. The rain plastered his blonde hair to his forehead as he approached the driver's side, his boots splashing through puddles. "Step out of the vehicle," he commanded, voice hard. The window rolled down smoothly. The driver was a black man in his early 40s, dressed in a tailored navy suit. His expression was calm, almost amused. "Problem, officer?" Holloway's jaw tightened. That tone, like the man, wasn't the least bit concerned. "You ran a red light. License and registration." The man chuckled, reaching into his jacket. Holloway's fingers twitched toward his gun, but instead of a weapon, the man produced a sleek leather wallet. He handed over his ID without a word. Holloway snatched it, glancing at the name, Darius King. The address listed was a penthouse in the same building they were parked in front of. He scoffed. "Mr. King, huh? You think because you've got money, traffic laws don't apply?" Darius leaned back in his seat, unfazed. "I think you should check who owns the car before you make assumptions." Holloway's patience was thinning. He radioed in the plates, waiting as dispatch ran them. The response made his blood run cold. Detective, that vehicle is registered to King Holdings. That's..." "I know what it is," Holloway snapped, cutting off the dispatcher. "King Holdings, the largest private investor in the city's law enforcement infrastructure. They funded half the precinct's equipment, the new training facility, even the damn pension fund." Darius smiled, slow and knowing. "Everything check out, officer?" Holloway's grip on the ID tightened. He wasn't about to back down. Not to some rich suit who thought he was untouchable. "Step out of the car, Mr. King, now." Darius sighed, as if dealing with a petulant child. He opened the door, stepping onto the sidewalk with effortless grace. He was taller than Holloway had expected, his presence commanding even in the pouring rain. "You're making a mistake," Darius said, his voice low. Holloway smirked. "We'll see about that." He reached for his cuffs. Then the high-rise's glass doors slid open. A group of men in suits emerged, private security, their expressions grim. At their head was Chief of Police Raymond Vaughn. Holloway froze. Vaughn's gaze locked onto him, then shifted to Darius. The chief's posture changed instantly, his shoulders squaring in deference. "Mr. King, everything all right?" Darius didn't take his eyes off Holloway. "Just a misunderstanding, Raymond. Your detective here seems to think I'm someone he can push around." Vaughn's face darkened. He stepped forward, his voice a growl. "Holloway, stand down!" Holloway's pulse pounded in his ears. This wasn't happening. "Chief, he ran a red light." "And I'll handle it," Vaughn snapped. He turned back to Darius. "My apologies, sir. I'll make sure this doesn't happen again." Darius gave a slow nod, then glanced at Holloway one last time. There was something dangerous in his eyes, a promise. "You should have checked who owned the station, detective." Then he turned and walked into the building, his security detail falling in behind him. Holloway stood there, rain soaking through his clothes, the weight of his mistake crushing him. Because King Holdings didn't just fund the precinct, they owned it. And Darius King wasn't just a CEO. He was the man who signed Vaughn's paychecks. Holloway had just made an enemy of the most powerful man in the city, and he had no idea what came next. Detective Mark Holloway stood frozen on the rain-slicked sidewalk, the weight of his mistake pressing down on him like a physical force. The Maybach's taillights disappeared into the night, leaving him alone with Chief Vaughn. whose expression was a storm darker than the clouds above. "My office. Now." Vaughn's voice was a whip crack of authority. Holloway followed in silence, his mind racing. The precinct was only a few blocks away, but the walk felt like miles. Every step was a reminder of how badly he'd misjudged the situation. The station buzzed with its usual late-night energy officers typing reports, suspects in cuffs muttering to their lawyers, the scent of stale coffee hanging thick in the air. But as Vaughn strode through, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Eyes darted toward Holloway, then quickly away. "They already know." Vaughn's office door slammed shut behind them. The chief didn't sit. He braced his hands on his desk, knuckles white. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Holloway kept his back straight. "I pulled over a guy who ran a red light. That's my job." "Your job?" Vaughn let out a harsh laugh. "Your job is to keep your head down and follow orders, not harass the man who funds this department." Holloway's jaw clenched. "Since when do we let people break the law just because they're rich?" Vaughn's fist came down on the desk with a crack. "Since those people decide whether we get new cruisers, bulletproof vests, or paychecks." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Darius King doesn't just own half this city. He owns the politicians, the judges, and if he wants to, he'll own your career." A cold knot formed in Holloway's gut. He'd heard the rumors. Of course, King Holdings' influence stretched into every corner of Chicago. But seeing Vaughn, a man who'd once taken down drug cartels without flinching, this rattled. It made the reality sink in. "So what now?" Holloway asked. Vaughn exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Now? You pray King doesn't decide to make an example out of you." He reached into his drawer and tossed a file onto the desk. "Until further notice, you're on desk duty." Holloway flipped it open. Inside was a case file, an old, unsolved homicide. "What's this?" "Busy work. Stay out of trouble." Vaughn's gaze was unyielding. "And Holloway? If King calls, you apologize." The next morning, Holloway sat at his desk, the stale coffee in his cup doing nothing to shake the exhaustion clinging to him. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Darius King's smirk. "Rough night?" Holloway looked up. His partner, Detective Lisa Chen, leaned against his desk, her dark brows raised. She was the only one in the precinct who hadn't treated him like a leper this morning. "Understatement," he muttered. Chen slid into the chair beside him, lowering her voice. "Words out. You pissed off the big boss." Holloway scoffed. "Since when do cops answer to CEOs?" "Since those CEOs own the mayor," Chen said bluntly. She tapped the file in front of him. "Vaughn gave you the Branson case?" "Yeah." "Why?" Chen's lips thinned. "Because that case is a graveyard. 5 years cold, no leads. They give it to guys they want to bury." Holloway's stomach dropped. So this was his punishment, shoved into a corner, forgotten. But then Chen did something unexpected. She pulled out her phone, swiped to a photo, and slid it toward him. It showed Darius King at a charity gala, his arm around a city councilman. But it was the man on King's other side that made Holloway's breath catch. Jason Branson, asterisk. The victim in his new busy work case. Holloway's pulse spiked. "You're telling me King knew the dead guy?" Chen's smile was razor thin. "I'm telling you that Branson was a whistleblower. He was about to expose illegal dumping by one of King's shell companies." She leaned closer. "And 2 days before he was set to testify, he turned up with a bullet in his skull." Holloway's mind raced. This wasn't a dead-end case. It was a bomb. And Vaughn had just handed it to him. "Why?" Chen's next words sent a chill down his spine. "You didn't just piss King off last night. You got his attention." She nodded at the file. "Now ask yourself, did Vaughn give you this to bury you? Or because he can't touch it himself?" Holloway stared at the photo, pieces clicking into place. If King had Branson killed, and Vaughn knew, then this wasn't just a punishment. It was a test. And Holloway had a choice: drop it and save his career, or dig and risk everything. Across the precinct, the phone on Vaughn's desk rang. The chief answered, his posture stiffening. Then his eyes cut straight to Holloway. Chen followed his gaze. "Uh-oh." Vaughn hung up, his voice booming across the room. "Holloway, my office. Now." Asterisk. The precinct went dead silent. Because standing beside Vaughn's desk, arms crossed and expression unreadable, was Darius King. And he was staring right at Holloway. The walk to Vaughn's office felt like crossing a minefield. Every cop in the precinct was watching, their eyes burning into Holloway's back. Darius King stood near the window, his tailored suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. He didn't look angry, just interested, like a scientist observing a lab rat. Vaughn's face was a mask of forced calm. "Shut the door." Holloway obeyed. The click of the latch sounded too loud in the sudden silence. King spoke first. "Detective Holloway." His voice was smooth, almost amused. "We meet again." Holloway kept his spine straight. "Mr. King." Vaughn cleared his throat. "Mr. King has concerns about last night's incident." King smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, I wouldn't call it an incident, just a misunderstanding." He stepped closer, his polished Oxford silent on the tile. "But misunderstandings can escalate, and I'd hate for your career to suffer over something so trivial." The threat was velvet, wrapped but unmistakable. Holloway's fingers twitched at his sides. "What do you want?" Vaughn stiffened, but King just chuckled. "Direct, I like that." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across Vaughn's desk. "I think you and I should talk. Privately." Holloway didn't touch it. "About what?" "About the Branson case." The air left Holloway's lungs. How the hell does he know about that already? Asterisk. King's smile widened, as if he'd heard the unspoken question. "I have resources, and I'd hate for you to waste time chasing shadows." He adjusted his cufflinks. "Tonight, my penthouse. 8 o'clock. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons." Vaughn's jaw worked like he wanted to say something, but King was already moving toward the door. He paused just beside Holloway, close enough that the scent of his expensive cologne filled the space between them. "Oh, and Detective?" King's voice dropped, just for him. "Come alone." Then he was gone, leaving silence in his wake. Vaughn waited until the footsteps faded before rounding on Holloway. "You will go. You will be polite. And you will not piss him off again." Holloway picked up the card, black embossed lettering. A penthouse address. No phone number because when Darius King summoned you, you didn't call. You obeyed. "What's his game?" Holloway muttered. Vaughn's laugh was bitter. "You think I'm in his confidence?" He sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. "Just do what he says. And for God's sake, stay away from the Branson case." Holloway spent the rest of the day digging. Officially, he was on desk duty. Unofficially, Chen had slipped him a thumb drive loaded with files the department had lost from the Branson investigation. Jason Branson had been an environmental scientist. 3 months before his death, he'd filed a report proving King Holdings' subsidiary, Green Core Solutions, was dumping toxic waste into the Chicago River. The day before he was set to testify, his apartment was burglarized. His hard drives were stolen. And then he was shot execution-style in a back alley. The case was ruled a botched robbery. No suspects. No leads. Bullshit. Asterisk. Holloway rubbed his eyes. The clock read 7:30 p.m. He should leave now if he wanted to make it to King's by 8. His phone buzzed. "Chen. Asterisk. Asterisk. Found something. Call me after your meeting. Asterisk. Asterisk." He pocketed the phone, his pulse kicking up. Time to see the devil in his lair. The Kingsley Tower was the tallest building in Chicago, its glass facade cutting into the sky like a blade. The lobby was all marble and silent tension, the security guards eyeing Holloway's rumpled suit with barely concealed disdain. "Detective Holloway," one said, not bothering to check a list. Penthouse elevator. The ride up was soundless, the numbers flashing higher and higher. Holloway adjusted his holster, reassuring himself of the weight at his hip. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city glittering below. A grand piano gleamed under recessed lighting. And there, silhouetted against the skyline, stood Darius King, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. Right on time. He didn't turn around. "Drink?" Holloway stepped forward. "I'm working." King chuckled. Of course you are. Finally he turned. Tell me, detective, why are you so interested in Jason Branson? No small talk, no pretense. Holloway matched his bluntness. Because his murder was covered up. King sipped his whiskey. And you think I had something to do with it, did you? For the first time, King's mask slipped. Something dark flickered in his eyes. If I wanted someone dead, they wouldn't be found in an alley. He set down his glass. Branson was a problem, but killing him? That would have been messy. Then who did? King moved to a sleek console, pressing a button. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a safe. He keyed in a code and withdrew a file. Someone who wanted to frame me. Holloway took the file. Inside were surveillance photos of a man meeting with Branson in a diner. The man's face was familiar: Councilman Richard Greer, one of King's most vocal opponents. Greer paid Branson to falsify that pollution report, King said. When Branson got cold feet, Greer had him silenced. Holloway's mind raced. It fit. Greer had been pushing for stricter regulations on King's businesses for years. A scandal like this would have been the perfect weapon. But something nagged at him. Why show me this? King's smile was razor thin. Because Vaughn will never let you investigate a councilman. But I can. He stepped closer. Help me expose Greer and I'll make sure you get the credit. The offer hung in the air, heavy with unspoken promises. A career-making case. A powerful ally. All it would cost was his integrity. Holloway closed the file. And if I say no? King's gaze turned glacial. Then you'll learn just how deep my influence runs. The threat was clear. Holloway had a choice: play King's game, or become his next enemy. And as he stood there, the city sprawled beneath them like a chessboard. He realized one terrifying truth. Darius King didn't just want to own the police. He wanted to own him. Holloway left the penthouse with King's file tucked under his arm, his mind racing. The night air was sharp against his skin as he stepped onto the sidewalk, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He pulled out his phone and dialed Chen. Tell me you're somewhere we can talk, she answered, her voice tense. Meet me at O'Malley's 10 minutes. The dive bar was half empty, the dim lighting and stale beer smell offering a comforting anonymity. Chen was already in a corner booth, 2 untouched whiskeys in front of her. Holloway slid in across from her and tossed the file onto the table. King just handed me his version of the Branson case. Chen's eyes flicked to the file, then back to him. And you? Took it? Didn't have much choice. Holloway downed one of the whiskeys, the burn doing little to settle his nerves. He says Councilman Greer set Branson up, then had him killed to cover his tracks. Chen's fingers tightened around her glass. You believe him? I don't know. Holloway exhaled sharply. But King's offering me a deal. Help him expose Greer, and I get the credit. Refuse, and... He didn't need to finish. Chen leaned in, her voice dropping. I pulled Branson's bank records. 2 days before he died, he got a $50,000 deposit, untraceable account. Holloway's pulse spiked. From Greer? Number. Chen's gaze was steady. From a shell company, linked to King Holdings. The revelation hit like a punch to the gut. If King paid Branson, then his whole story about Greer was a lie. So King did bribe him, Holloway muttered, then killed him when he got cold feet. Chen nodded. And now he's dangling Greer in front of you to clean up his mess. Holloway's knuckles whitened around his glass. King had played him perfectly, offering just enough truth to make the lie believable. What do we do? Chen hesitated, then pulled a burner phone from her pocket and slid it across the table. I reached out to someone, a reporter from the Tribune. She's been digging into King for years. Holloway stared at the phone. You brought a journalist into this? She's got sources we don't. And right now, we need all the help we can get. Chen's jaw set. King owns the police. The politicians. The only way to take him down is to go public. Holloway's instincts screamed at him to walk away. But the image of Branson's autopsy photo, the single bullet to the back of the head, flashed in his mind. He grabbed the burner. Set up a meeting. The reporter's name was Elena Vasquez. She met them in a back room of a library the next morning, her sharp eyes scanning Holloway like she was assessing how much trouble he was worth. You're either very brave or very stupid, she said, flipping open a notebook. King ruins people like you for breakfast. Then let's ruin him first, Holloway said. Elena smirked. I like you. She tapped her pen against the page. Here's what I know. King's been using Greencore Solutions to dump toxic waste for years. Branson was going to expose it, but King got to him first. The payment Chen found? That was hush money. When Branson decided to talk anyway, King had him silenced. Holloway's stomach twisted. You have proof? Elena pulled a flash drive from her bag. Bank records. Emails. Enough to connect King to the murder. She paused. But it's not enough for an arrest. Not with his connections. Then what? We'll take him down. Elena's smile was grim. A confession. Holloway barked a laugh. You think King's just going to admit it? Not willingly. She leaned forward. But he's hosting a fundraiser tonight at the Kingsley Tower. Every powerful person in the city will be there. If we can get him on record, you're talking about wiretapping. Chen cut in. That's illegal. So is murder. Elena shot back. Holloway's mind raced. If they pulled this off, King would go down. But if they failed, I'll do it, he said. Chen's head snapped toward him. You can't be serious. I'm not letting him walk. Holloway met Elena's gaze. How do we get the wire in? Elena handed him a small, circular device, a microphone, disguised as a button. Stick this on your jacket. Get him talking about Branson. We'll record everything. Chen grabbed Holloway's arm. If King finds out, you're dead. Holloway pocketed the wire. Then he better not find out. The fundraiser was a sea of tailored suits and glittering dresses, the air thick with the clink of champagne glasses and hollow laughter. Holloway adjusted his tie, the wire pressing against his chest like a second heartbeat. King held court near the center of the room, his smile effortless as he shook hands with the mayor. Holloway forced himself to approach. Detective. King's gaze flicked to him, amused. I didn't expect to see you here. Thought I'd take a closer look at how the other half lives, Holloway said, keeping his tone light. King chuckled. And? Still preferred dive bars. That earned a genuine laugh. King clapped him on the shoulder, leaning in like they were old friends. You're smarter than I thought. Maybe there's a place for you in my organization. Holloway's skin crawled, but he played along. After what happened with Branson, I'd need some guarantees. King's grip tightened imperceptibly. Let's talk somewhere private. He steered Holloway onto a balcony overlooking the city. The noise of the party faded, replaced by the distant hum of traffic below. You want the truth about Branson? King's voice was low, dangerous. He was greedy. Took my money, then threatened to talk unless I paid him more. He shrugged. I don't respond well to threats. Holloway's blood ran cold. Asterisk. That's a confession. Asterisk. But King wasn't done. The problem with men like Branson, like you, is that you think there's always a right thing to do. He smiled. There's only power. And I have it. Holloway forced himself to keep eye contact. And if I walk away? King's smile didn't waver. Then you'll end up like Branson. The threat hung in the air, stark and unmistakable. Holloway's fingers brushed against the wire. Got you. Asterisk. But then King's hand shot out, snatching Holloway's lapel. With a sharp tug, he ripped the button free. Holloway's heart stopped. King held the wire between them, his expression turning icy. Did you really think I wouldn't check? The balcony door burst open. Two of King's security guards stepped out, blocking the exit. Holloway was out of time. And out of options. The balcony felt like a cage. King's security guards loomed behind Holloway, cutting off any chance of retreat. The wire dangled from King's fingers, glinting under the city lights like a tiny, damning trophy. Holloway's hand drifted toward his holster, then froze as one of the guards drew his own weapon. Don't be stupid, detective, King murmured. He pocketed the wire, his expression more disappointed than angry. I expected better from you. Holloway forced his voice steady. You just confessed to murder? King laughed, low and humorless. To you. And who's going to believe a disgraced cop with a grudge? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Walk away now, and I'll forget this happened. A lie. Holloway knew it in his bones. King didn't forget. He ended problems. But playing along was his only move. Fine. Holloway raised his hand slightly. We're done. King studied him for a long moment, then nodded to his guards. Escort him out. The men flanked Holloway, their grips firm on his arms as they steered him through the party. The crowd barely glanced their way, just another drunk guest being removed. No one questioned King's authority. The elevator ride down was silent. The guards dumped him in the lobby with a final warning shove before returning upstairs. Holloway stood there, his mind racing. Asterisk, they'll come for me. Asterisk, he needed to move. Chen was waiting in her car a block away. She took one look at Holloway's face and cursed. He found the wire. Yeah. Holloway slammed the passenger door. And he admitted it. Branson was blackmailing him, so he had him killed. Chen's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. We have to go to Vaughn. Vaughn works for King. Holloway pulled out his phone and dialed Elena. It rang twice before she picked up. Did you get it? She demanded. Number. He found the wire. A sharp inhale. Then you're in trouble. Tell me something I don't know. Holloway's pulse hammered. Can you still run the story? Without the recording? Not without proof, but she hesitated. There's another way. Branson had a partner, someone who knew what he was working on. Holloway straightened. Who? Dr. Naomi Price. She's a toxicologist at Chicago General. Branson sent her his findings before he died. Holloway exchanged a glance with Chen. We'll talk to her. Be careful, Elena warned. If King finds out? Yeah, Holloway muttered. I know. He hung up. Chen was already pulling into traffic. Chicago General, Holloway said. Now. Dr. Naomi Price was in her late 30s, with sharp green eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. When Holloway and Chen flashed their badges at the hospital, she led them to an empty exam room without a word. I wondered when someone would come, she said, locking the door. Holloway cut to the chase. Branson sent you his research on King Holdings. Naomi's mouth tightened. He did, and 2 days later, he was dead. She crossed her arms. You're not the first cops to ask about this. Holloway's stomach dropped. Who else? Detectives from the 12th Precinct. They took everything Jason gave me. She paused. But they didn't know about the backups. Chen leaned forward. Where are they? Naomi pulled a key from her pocket. Storage locker. 114B over on Wentworth. She pressed it into Holloway's hand. Jason was paranoid. He made copies of everything: water samples, lab reports, even photos of Green Corps trucks dumping waste at night. Holloway's grip tightened on the key. This is enough to prove King was covering it up. Enough to prove he killed for it. Naomi's voice was steel. But you need to move fast. If King finds out. The hospital intercom crackled to life. Asterisk Dr. Price, to the ER, stat. Asterisk Naomi's face paled. I didn't call that in. A beat of silence. Then footsteps, heavy, multiple. Coming down the hall, Holloway's hand went to his gun. Back door. Now. Asterisk. Naomi didn't argue. She yanked open a supply closet, revealing a staff exit. Chen went first, gun drawn. Holloway shoved the key into his pocket and followed. Just as the exam room door burst open behind them, a voice shouted, Stop them! Asterisk! They ran. The storage facility was a graveyard of metal units under flickering lights. Holloway's hands shook as he unlocked 114B. Inside were stacks of file boxes, a laptop, and a small safe. Naomi dropped to her knees and spun the safe's dial. Jason kept the most damning stuff separate. The safe opened with a click. Inside was a single flash drive. Chen grabbed it. We need to get this to Elena. Holloway's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk. Asterisk. You have something that belongs to me. Asterisk. Asterisk. His blood turned to ice. Another text. Asterisk. Asterisk. Leave the drive in the locker. Walk away. Or Price dies next. Asterisk. Asterisk. Naomi's breath hitched. He's watching us. Holloway's head snapped up. Across the lot, a security camera pointed directly at them. King's reach was everywhere. Chen cursed. What do we do? Holloway stared at the flash drive. Proof of murder. Proof of corruption. And King knew they had it. He made his decision. We don't back down. He pocketed the drive. We end this. The storage facility's flickering lights cast jagged shadows as Holloway, Chen, and Naomi stood frozen in the cramped locker. The weight of King's threat pressed down on them like a physical force. Naomi's hands trembled as she shoved the empty safe shut. "He'll kill me." Holloway gripped the flash drive in his fist. "Not if we get this to the press first." Chen was already moving, peering out the locker's door into the dimly lit corridor. "We can't stay here. That camera's probably feeding straight to King's security." A distant metallic clang echoed through the facility. Holloway's spine stiffened. "Someone's here." Naomi's breath hitched. "They followed us." Another sound closer this time. Footsteps. Holloway drew his gun and motioned for Chen to take the left flank. "Stay behind me," he muttered to Naomi. They crept into the hallway, the flickering overhead lights making the rows of storage units seem endless. Holloway's pulse pounded in his ears. Every shadow felt like a threat. Then movement. A figure stepped into the far end of the corridor. Tall, broad-shouldered. Holloway's finger hovered over the trigger. "Freeze! Police! Asterisk!" Chen barked. The man didn't stop. Holloway's instincts screamed. Not security. Not cops. Asterisk. Hitmen. Asterisk. Down. Asterisk. He yanked Naomi behind a stack of crates as gunfire erupted. Bullets punched into the metal walls around them. Chen returned fire, her shots forcing the attacker to duck behind cover. "We're pinned!" she shouted. Holloway's mind raced. One shooter, maybe more. No clear exit. Then Naomi grabbed his arm. "There's a fire exit at the end of this row." Another volley of gunfire. Holloway fired back blindly, buying them seconds. "Go! Now! Asterisk!" They sprinted down the corridor, bullets ricocheting behind them. Holloway shoved Naomi toward the emergency door just as another figure rounded the corner ahead, a second gunman, weapon raised. Holloway didn't hesitate. He fired twice. The man crumpled. Chen kicked open the fire exit. Cold night air rushed in as they spilled into the alley behind the facility. No time to stop. No time to think. "Cars 2 blocks east," Chen gasped, holstering her weapon. They ran. The safe house was a dingy apartment above a laundromat, one of Chen's off-the-book spots from her undercover days. Holloway barricaded the door while Naomi collapsed onto a rickety chair, her face ashen. Chen tossed Holloway a burner phone. "Elena's on speed dial. We need to move fast. King's guys will be crawling the city." Holloway dialed. Elena answered on the first ring. "You're alive?" Her voice was tight with relief. "Barely." Holloway wiped sweat from his brow. "We've got the evidence. Branson's files, photos, everything. Where are you?" "Somewhere King won't look. For now." He glanced at Naomi, who was hugging herself like she might unravel. "We need a way to get this to the public. Fast." Elena was silent for a beat. Then, "There's a guy. Marcus Boone. He runs an independent news site, no corporate ties, nothing King can pressure. If we give him the files, he'll blast them everywhere before King can stop it." Holloway's jaw clenched. "And if King finds out, then Boone's dead too." Elena exhaled sharply. "But it's the only play we've got." Holloway looked at Chen. She gave a grim nod. "Set it up." Marcus Boone was a wiry man in his 50s, with a hacker's pallor and the twitchy energy of someone who'd spent too many years dodging powerful enemies. His office was a basement filled with servers, the blue glow of monitors reflecting off his glasses as he plugged in the flash drive. "This better be good," he muttered. The files loaded. Water test results. Time-stamped photos of Green Corps trucks dumping barrels into the river. And most Dominga scanned document with King's personal signature authorizing the cover-up. Boone whistled. "Oh, this is beautiful." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "I can have this live in 20 minutes. Once it's up, it'll spread like wildfire. No way King can scrub it." Holloway's shoulders tightened. "And after?" Boone smirked. "After, I disappear. King's not the only one with friends in high places." He nodded to a duffel bag in the corner. "Always packed." Chen's phone buzzed. She frowned at the screen. "Vaughn." Holloway's stomach dropped. "Don't answer." "He sent 6 missed calls." She hesitated. "What if he's not working for King? Or what if King's using him to find us?" Naomi interjected, her voice sharp with fear. Boone spun in his chair. "Either way, you've got 15 minutes until this goes nuclear. I'd be somewhere safe when it does. A decision. Now." Holloway grabbed Chen's arm. "We split up. You take Naomi. Get somewhere secure. I'll deal with Vaughn. Chen's eyes flashed. That's a terrible idea. It's the only one we've got. He squeezed her wrist. Go. For a second, he thought she'd argue. Then she nodded stiffly. Don't die. She and Naomi slipped out the back. Holloway took a breath, then answered Vaughn's call. Where the hell are you? Asterisk. Vaughn's roar was loud enough to make Boone wince. Holloway kept his voice steady. Safe. You're not safe. King's got half the department looking for you. A pause. Then lower. They're saying you stole evidence, that you're working with Branson's partner to frame him. Holloway barked a laugh. Yeah? Then why's he trying to kill us? Silence. Then Vaughn's voice dropped to a whisper. Meet me, alone, the old Docks Warehouse 12, 1 hour. The line went dead. Boone raised an eyebrow. Trap? Probably. Holloway checked his gun. But if Vaughn's finally turning on King, we need him. Boone shook his head. Your funeral. The timer on his screen ticked down. 10 minutes until the world knows the truth. Holloway headed for the door. One way or another, this ended tonight. The docks were a graveyard of rusted metal and rotting wood. The stench of salt and decay thick in the air. Holloway moved like a shadow between the skeletal remains of shipping containers. His gun drawn, every sense on high alert. Warehouse 12 loomed ahead, its corrugated steel walls pockmarked with age. This is a trap. Asterisk. The thought echoed in his skull, but he didn't slow down. If Vaughn was finally ready to turn against King, this was their only shot. If not, well, Holloway had already burned his life to the ground. Might as well see it through. A single flickering bulb illuminated the warehouse entrance. Holloway paused, listening. The distant lap of water against the pilings. The creak of old metal. Nothing else. He stepped inside. The interior was cavernous, stacked with forgotten crates and draped in cobwebs. At the center stood Vaughn, his back to the door, shoulders tense. You came alone? Vaughn didn't turn around. Holloway kept his gun at his side but didn't holster it. Yeah, you? Vaughn finally faced him. The chief looked like he hadn't slept in days. His uniform rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. King's got people everywhere, even in my department. He rubbed his jaw. You really stole his files? I took evidence, Holloway corrected. Proof he had Branson killed. Vaughn's expression darkened. And you're about to go public. It wasn't a question. Holloway's grip tightened on his weapon. You here to stop me? For a long moment, Vaughn just stared at him. Then, slowly, he reached into his coat. Holloway raised his gun. Vaughn froze. Easy. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and tossed it at Holloway's feet. Take a look. Holloway kept his aim steady as he crouched to retrieve it. The paper was a bank statement. A single transaction, dated the day after Branson's murder. Asterisk. Asterisk. $250,000 from Green Core Solutions to an offshore account. Asterisk. Asterisk. The account was Vaughn's. Holloway's blood turned to ice. You took a payoff. Vaughn's face twisted. I buried the case because King ordered me to. And yeah, I took the money. His voice cracked. But I didn't know he'd killed Branson. Not until tonight. Holloway wanted to pull the trigger. Wanted to watch Vaughn crumple the way Branson had. But the raw guilt in Vaughn's eyes gave him pause. Why show me this now? Vaughn exhaled sharply. Because Boone's about to drop the story. And when he does, King's going scorched earth. He stepped closer. He's got a plane waiting at O'Hare. If we don't stop him, he'll vanish and everyone connected to this dies. Holloway's mind raced. If Vaughn was lying, this was a play to get the flash drive. But if he was telling the truth, a vibration in his pocket. Chen's burner number. He answered without looking away from Vaughn. Asterisk, it's live, Chen hissed. Boone just published everything. King's name is everywhere. Holloway's pulse spiked. Where are you? Safe house. But a muffled sound in the background. Then Naomi's voice panicked. Asterisk. They're here. Asterisk. The line went dead. Holloway's stomach dropped. Chenritu. Naomi. Asterisk. Vaughn read his expression. King's cleaning house. Holloway was already moving. Where's the plane? Private hangar. But you'll never get close without... Where? Asterisk. Vaughn gave him the number. Then, as Holloway turned to leave, the chief grabbed his arm. "You'll need this." He pressed a keycard into Holloway's palm. "Security override. Only works once." Holloway stared at it. "Why help me?" Vaughn's smile was grim. "Because I'm dead either way." The safe house was a war zone. Holloway found the door kicked in, the walls scarred with bullet holes. No bodies but blood smeared the floor, leading to the window. They got out. Asterisk. He prayed Chen had gotten Naomi somewhere safe. No time to search. King would be heading for the airport. He stole a motorcycle from a nearby alley and gunned it toward O'Hare, weaving through traffic, the wind screaming in his ears. Boone's story had lit the city on fire. News vans swarmed King Holdings' headquarters, protesters already gathering outside the precinct. The empire was crumbling, but empires didn't fall without a fight. The private hangar was guarded by 4 armed men. Holloway ditched the bike 100 yards out and approached on foot, using the parked jets for cover. Vaughn's keycard burned in his pocket. One guard peeled off to patrol the perimeter. Holloway waited until the man rounded a fuel truck, then struck a chokehold, a muffled grunt, and the guard slumped unconscious. 2 down, 2 to go. He stole the guard's rifle and slipped into the hangar's service entrance. The roar of a jet engine filled the space. At the far end, a sleek white plane was already taxiing toward the runway. Number. King stood at the foot of the stairs, barking orders at his remaining guards. Holloway raised the rifle. A bullet whizzed past his ear. He ducked behind a crate as return fire shredded the wood above him. 3rd guard. Holloway returned fire, catching the man in the shoulder. The guard went down with a cry. King's head snapped toward the sound. Their eyes met across the hangar. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then King bolted up the stairs into the plane. Holloway sprinted after him, bullets biting at his heels as the 4th guard opened fire. The jet's engine screamed, the stairs retracting as the door began to close. Holloway leaped, his fingers caught the edge of the door. The plane was moving now, accelerating down the runway. He hauled himself up, kicking at the guard trying to stomp his hands. The man stumbled back, and Holloway rolled inside just as the door sealed shut. The cabin was all leather and polished wood. And there, strapped into a plush seat, was Darius King. He wasn't alone. Naomi sat across from him, a gun pressed to her temple by a smirking security detail. King sighed. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" Holloway raised his stolen rifle but froze as the guard cocked the hammer. King smiled. "Now, let's talk." The plane's engines roared as it accelerated down the runway, pressing Holloway into the plush leather seat. The guard's gun stayed glued to Naomi's temple, her terrified gaze locked onto Holloway. King lounged across from them, swirling a glass of bourbon like this was just another business meeting. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble, Detective," King said, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. Holloway kept his stolen rifle trained on King's chest. "Let her go," King chuckled. "Or what? You'll shoot me? Then my man blows her brains out, and we all die in the ensuing crash." He took a slow sip. "Put the gun down." Holloway's finger hovered over the trigger. One shot. He could take King down right now, but Naomi would die. The plane would go down. He lowered the rifle. King's smirk widened. "Good choice." The guard wrenched Naomi's arms behind her back, zip-tying her wrists. Holloway's jaw clenched as another guard disarmed him, patting him down roughly before shoving him into a seat. "Where's Chen?" Holloway demanded. "Alive, for now." King set his glass down. "She's resourceful, took out 2 of my men before they subdued her." He leaned forward. "But let's not pretend this is about your partner. This is about you refusing to accept your place." The plane lifted off, the city shrinking below them. Holloway's stomach lurched. Every second in the air was a second farther from help. "You're finished," Holloway said. "The whole world knows what you did." King waved a hand. "The world has a short memory. A few donations, a few lawsuits, and Boone's evidence disappears into conspiracy theory forums." His eyes hardened. "But you're a loose end." Naomi made a small, desperate sound. Holloway shot her a look. "Stay calm," before turning back to King. "What do you want?" King steepled his fingers. "The flash drive." Holloway barked a laugh. "It's gone public. You think I still have it? Number. But you have something else. King's gaze was razor sharp. Vaughn's keycard. Holloway stiffened. The security override. How the hell did he know about that? King sighed. You didn't really think Vaughn helped you out of guilt, did you? That keycard is tagged. The second you used it, I knew. He held out his hand. Give it to me. Holloway's mind raced. The card was in his pocket. If King got it, he could wipe any remaining evidence from secure servers. But if Holloway refused, the guard pressed the gun harder against Naomi's skull. Slowly, Holloway reached into his pocket and tossed the card onto the table. King pocketed it with a satisfied nod. Now, the real question is what to do with you. He glanced out the window. We're over Lake Michigan, deepest part. Bodies don't surface there. Naomi whimpered. Holloway forced his voice steady. You're just going to shoot us mid-flight? Oh, not me. King stood straightening his cuffs. I'll be in the cockpit. Plausible deniability. He nodded to the guards. Make it quick. The second the cockpit door closed behind King, Holloway moved. He lunged sideways, driving his elbow into the nearest guard's throat. The man gagged. Stumbling back, Holloway snatched the pistol from his belt and fired twice. The guard holding Naomi dropped. Chaos erupted. The remaining guard tackled Holloway, slamming him into the cabin wall. Naomi screamed, thrashing against her restraints. Holloway drove his knee up, catching the guard in the ribs, then pistol whipped him across the temple. The guard crumpled. Holloway snatched a knife from the fallen man's belt and sawed through Naomi's zip ties. Can you fly this thing? She stared at him wild-eyed. What? The plane. Can you land it? 2. Don't know. The cockpit door burst open. King stood there, a sleek silver revolver in his hand. Holloway shoved Naomi behind him and raised his stolen pistol. King fired first. The bullet tore through Holloway's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Pain exploded like white heat, but he gritted his teeth and returned fire. King ducked back into the cockpit. The plane lurched violently, diving into a nosedive. Naomi screamed, clutching the seats as loose objects flew through the cabin. Holloway staggered toward the cockpit, blood soaking his shirt. Through the windshield, the lake rushed up to meet them. King was going to crash the plane. Holloway kicked the door open. King spun. Revolver raised. Holloway shot him in the chest. King gasped, stumbling back against the controls. The plane veered sharply, throwing Holloway into the instrument panel. Alarms blared. The co-pilot's seat was empty. Where the hell was the pilot? Then he saw. Slumped in the corner, a bullet hole in his forehead. King had killed his own pilot. Naomi appeared in the doorway, her face bloodless. We're going down! Holloway grabbed the controls, pulling back with all his strength. The plane's nose inched up, but the altimeter was still dropping. 5,000 feet. 4,000. They weren't going to make it. Brace! Holloway roared. The world exploded in noise and pain as the plane clipped the water, spinning violently before slamming to a stop. Silence. Then cold. Water rushed into the cabin, swirling around Holloway's waist as he fought to unbuckle himself. Naomi was already moving, clawing her way toward the emergency exit. King's body floated limply in the rising water, his blood swirling like ink. Holloway kicked free and followed Naomi out into the freezing lake. The plane sank behind them, bubbles rising as it disappeared into the depths. They were alive, but the fight wasn't over. The icy water of Lake Michigan clawed at Holloway's skin like a living thing, each stroke sending fresh bolts of pain through his wounded shoulder. Naomi gasped beside him, her arms flailing as she fought to stay afloat. The plane's wreckage had vanished beneath the black waves, taking King's body with it. But the cold would kill them, just as surely, if they didn't find land. How far? To shore. Naomi's teeth chattered violently. Holloway squinted through the darkness. The lights of Chicago glittered in the distance, impossibly far. Too far. A sound cut through the night, the low thrum of an engine. A fishing boat materialized out of the gloom, its spotlight sweeping the water. Holloway waved his good arm, shouting until his voice cracked. The light pinned them. Holy shit, survivors! A bearded man in a raincoat leaned over the bow, tossing a life ring. Grab on! They were hauled aboard, shivering and dripping, as the fisherman's crew wrapped them in blankets. Holloway's vision swam. Blood loss and exhaustion dragged at him like weights. "You're that cop," the fisherman muttered, staring at Holloway's badge. "The one all over the news." Naomi clutched the blanket tighter. "We need to get to shore. Now. Asterisk." The man nodded, gunning the engine toward the city. The safe house was Elena's this time, a cramped studio apartment above a bodega, its windows covered in newspaper. Chen was already there, her left arm in a sling, her face a mosaic of bruises. She shot to her feet when they stumbled in. "Asterisk, you're alive! Asterisk!" She grabbed Holloway's uninjured shoulder, her voice raw. "They said the plane went down." "King's dead," Holloway rasped. Elena, hunched over her laptop at the kitchen table, didn't look up. Not enough. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. His empire's still standing. The files went viral, but his lawyers are already spinning it. Without a body, without proof, he's gone. His people will keep the machine running. Holloway sank onto the couch, wincing as Naomi peeled back his blood-soaked shirt to inspect the bullet wound. "We have to hit them before they regroup." Chen tossed a burner phone onto the coffee table. "Vaughn's been trying to reach you." Holloway stared at it. "Why?" "Because he's panicking." Elena finally looked up, her eyes gleaming. "King's inner circle is scrambling. Vaughn's trying to save his own ass." Naomi pressed a makeshift bandage to Holloway's shoulder. "You can't trust him." "No," Holloway agreed. "But we can use him." He picked up the phone and dialed. Vaughn answered on the first ring. "Holloway? Asterisk." The chief's voice was frayed at the edges. "Where the hell are you?" "Alive. Unlike King." Holloway let the words hang. "You've got 10 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't release your bank records next." A beat of silence. Then Vaughn exhaled sharply. "I can give you the others." Holloway's eyebrows rose. "Others?" "The board. King's inner circle. They're meeting tonight at the Kingsley Tower Emergency Summit." Vaughn's voice dropped. "I can get you in, but you'll need evidence that sticks." Holloway glanced at Elena. She nodded fiercely. "Send the details," he said, and hung up. Chen scowled. "This is a trap?" "Probably." Holloway tested his weight on his legs. The room swayed, but he stayed upright. "But it's the only play we've got." The Kingsley Tower was a fortress. Holloway watched from a parked car across the street, counting armed guards at the entrance. Vaughn had texted the access codes, but trusting him was suicide. They needed another way in. Naomi pointed to a service van idling near the loading dock. "Maintenance crew. They'll have keycards." 5 minutes later, Holloway borrowed a janitor's uniform and a keycard from an unsuspecting worker. The outfit swam on him, and the hat did little to hide his face, but it would have to do. Chen, her arm still in the sling, stayed in the car as lookout. Elena monitored security feeds from a tablet. Naomi, posing as a cleaning crew supervisor, led the way through the loading dock. The service elevator was cramped and reeked of bleach. Holloway's shoulder throbbed with every jolt upward. "Boardroom's on the 60th floor," Naomi whispered. "Vaughn said they're voting on a new CEO tonight." Holloway adjusted the wire Elena had rigged under his uniform. "Then let's give them a show." The elevator dinged. They stepped out into a marble hallway lined with King's security. Naomi flashed a forged ID, her voice steady. "Deep, clean, detail. Mr. Vaughn's orders." The guards waved them through. The boardroom doors loomed ahead. Holloway took a breath, then pushed them open. 20 faces turned to stare. Vaughn sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid. The other executives, lawyers, a city councilman froze mid-conversation. Then chaos erupted. "Asterisk, that's Holloway. Asterisk." Chairs screeched as men reached for phones and guns. Vaughn didn't move. Holloway raised his phone, streaming the room live to Elena's servers. "Sit down," he said, his voice cutting through the noise, "or the world sees this." The councilman, Greer, sneered. "You're bluffing. King's lawyers will bury you." "King's at the bottom of the lake." Holloway tapped his phone, and the room's screens lit up with footage from the plane's black box. King's final moments, his confession, the crash. "And you're all next." The room went dead silent. Vaughn finally stood. "It's over." He nodded to the guards. "Arrest them." To Holloway's shock, The guards moved, but not toward him. They handcuffed Greer and the others, reading Miranda rights as executives shouted betrayal. Vaughn met Holloway's gaze. "I told you I'd give them to you." Holloway didn't lower his phone. "Why?" "Because King's dead." Vaughn's smile was thin. "And I'd rather be on the winning side." Elena's voice crackled in Holloway's earpiece. Asterisk, we're live. The whole world's watching. Asterisk. Holloway stepped aside. As federal agents swarmed the room, Vaughn's insurance policy. The arrests would make headlines. The evidence would stick. And in the chaos, Holloway slipped out. The sun was rising by the time they regrouped at the safe house. Chen had stitches in her arm. Naomi was bundled in blankets, finally warm. Elena collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but grinning. "It's done," she said. "Every major outlet's running the story. King's empire is crumbling." Holloway stared out the window at the city below. King was gone. His enablers were in cuffs. So why didn't it feel like victory? Chen nudged him. "You okay?" He flexed his injured shoulder. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how many more kings are out there." The room fell quiet. Elena broke the silence. "Then we take them down too." Holloway turned to face them, the journalist, the scientist, the cop who'd risked everything. He smiled. "Yeah," he said. "We do." 3 months later, the city of Chicago felt different. The headlines had finally stopped screaming. The protests outside King Holdings skyscrapers had dwindled. The arrests of Greer and the board members had made national news, followed by the resignations of 2 judges and the police commissioner. The fallout was far from over. Trials were still pending, investigations still unfolding, but for the first time in years, the city breathed easier. Holloway stood on the rooftop of a modest downtown apartment building, the wind tugging at his jacket. His shoulder had healed, though the scar would always be there, a reminder of the bullet that had nearly ended him. The door behind him creaked open. Chen stepped out, 2 steaming mugs in hand. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing him one. Holloway took it, the heat seeping into his fingers. "You're supposed to be on leave," Chen smirked. "And you're supposed to be retired," he snorted. After everything that had gone down, Vaughn had offered him his badge back along with a promotion. Holloway had turned it down. He'd seen enough of the system's cracks to know he couldn't fix it from the inside. "What about you?" he asked. Chen sighed, leaning against the railing. "Thinking about taking Elena up on her offer." Holloway raised an eyebrow. "Investigative journalism? Someone's gotta keep digging." She sipped her coffee. "Besides, after this, I doubt any precinct will touch me." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city below. The door opened again. Naomi stepped out, her arms crossed against the chill. She'd traded her lab coat for a sleek blazer. Her environmental nonprofit had already forced new regulations on 6 shell companies tied to King's empire. "Boone's back," she said. Holloway blinked. "I thought he was in witness protection." "He got bored," Naomi grinned. "Says he's got a lead on another corporate cover-up. Wants to know if we're in." Chen groaned. "Give me a week at least." Holloway shook his head, but he was smiling. The truth was, they'd all been changed by this. King was gone, but the rot he'd thrived in still existed. There would always be another corrupt CEO, another bought politician, another cop willing to look the other way. But there would also be people like Chen, like Naomi, like Elena, and Boone. People who refused to back down. Holloway took a last sip of coffee and set the mug down. "Tell Boone we'll meet him tomorrow." Chen groaned again, but she was already pulling out her phone. Naomi laughed, the sound bright against the city's hum. And as the sun set over Chicago, Holloway allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They'd won this fight. And the next one? They'd win that too.